Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk About Houses. I'm Todd.
I'm Juana.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about what rents are going to do in 2023. It's January of 2023. We've been paying a lot of attention to this because rents affect home prices.
Right.
So let's talk about that really quick because we have the number. So basically, we have a range of numbers, but we picked the one that was kind of like the middle number that we thought made the most sense.
Okay, but before we do that, okay, you know how we play rock, paper, scissors? So on three, thumbs up, thumbs down, or in the middle if you think rents are going to go up, down, or stay the same. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Go up. Okay.
So let's see what you think versus what the economists think.
Put it in the comments, right? Whatever you think in the comments.
Yes.
What you think is going to happen with rents. Okay. Juana, let's first talk about this before we do the number.
Okay.
Why do rents and home prices sort of tend to go hand in hand, but not always?
Okay, so the thing about rents is that they tend to go up when there is not enough supply.
Okay.
Now, in the present environment where we have not a whole lot of inventory on the market, we have people who are not moving around. That means that whatever rental pool is out there, that's it, not a lot of choices. So because there are not a lot of choices, vacancies are low. That means that rents are either stable or going up.
Okay. What about, because I've always had this theory that the more unaffordable it is to buy, the more people are forced to rent, and the more people are forced to do anything, prices go up.
Right, because you have more people seeking out rentals. The rental pool is already limited, so that obviously supply and demand, it makes rents go up. And right now, across the country, the vacancy rate is less than 4%. So that means that that's just enough houses that are in transition, meaning that the house is empty, maybe it's getting cleaned up or repaired or whatever before it goes on to the new tenant. So virtually all houses that are not in transition are rented out already.
Yeah, and that 4% number is exactly what one is talking about. That's sort of like the unemployment rate, right?
Right.
When yes, the unemployment rate is at historic lows right now, but the rental vacancy rate is absolutely at historic lows right now. Literally every piece of housing that is available to be rented is rented. And I remember at one part of the financial crisis that we estimated we have 50,000 houses in Vegas that were vacant.
Right.
We don't have that now.
Right. So
everything's rented.
And the reason we had that estimate is because we actually got that from the power company, because they kept track of how many houses were vacant based on what was going on with the meters.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to hit the number here. I'm going to read this whole slide because I think it's pretty interesting.
Okay.
As fewer households make the jump to home ownership, increased rental demand could help keep rents moving higher. Nationwide, the median rentals projected increase 6.3% in price, even as an influx of new multifamily housing helps to better meet rental demand. This is the part I thought was really funny. Renters looking to save in the year ahead may consider moving further out to the suburbs. So basically what they're saying is, if you don't like rents, go somewhere else.
Right. So, but that's kind of the way it is right now. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of rental inventory out there. So without inventory and sustained demand, you're going to see prices either, depending on your market, either go up or remain pretty stable.
Okay. Renters do not have a hedge against inflation.
No, they don't. And that's really kind of the hard part for a renter, right? Because for a renter, the price of their housing is not constant. It varies from year to year depending on where they live and what's going on with their landlord, as opposed to a homeowner where a homeowner has a fixed price for their housing year in and year out because they usually have a fixed rate mortgage.
Renters are actually the hedge against inflation for investors.
Right.
Because investors is stuff costs. Let's talk about that. Inflation forces investors to pay more for things surrounding housing that maybe the landscaping they pay for, maybe utilities are included, whatever. But as that stuff happens naturally, it gets passed on to the renter.
So yeah, because an investor is going to have he's going to have to do repairs to the property because obviously things happen. Maybe put in new appliances, other repairs, landscaping. To your point, the price of insurance goes up every year. The property taxes go up every year. So all these things kind of play into that. but they can usually pass that cost along to the tenant so that they're not having to absorb these increases and have their bottom line be negatively impacted.
Let's talk about the stickiness of rents. In the great financial crisis, median home prices in Las Vegas were 310 to 315. That was the median, which today sounds ridiculously low, right? Okay. Rents were about 1,200, 1,250. That was rent. Okay, when home prices got decimated, absolutely crashed, 135 was the median home price. That same 310 house was now 135. Rents went all the way down to $1,100. They literally dropped like 150 bucks. They definitely softened. In higher end homes, they were much softer, but median rents didn't change that much. There's a stickiness to rent. Why is there stickiness to rent? And why is it, answer it, and I'll let you answer it one question two ways. Why is rent sticky going down, and why is it easy to pass on small rental at 50, 100 bucks a month rent every year when they renew?
Right. So if the rental market is declining, it's unlikely that your landlord will decrease your rent. It is more likely that your landlord will leave your rent the same, or maybe put in a new dishwasher for you, but that's about it. It's highly unlikely that your rent will go down. Your landlord is very aware that it is expensive for you to move. Even if you're doing the move yourself, you have to take time off work, you have to rent the U-Haul truck, you have to come up with all the front money for the new landlord as far as your deposits and that sort of thing. So your landlord understands that. So they're not incentivized to reduce your rent. They're incentivized to keep you happy. So maybe not increase your rent, but reduce it. That doesn't happen very often. And then on the upside, that's easy. Same kind of thing. Your landlord knows that you're not going to move somewhere else because he's raised your rent $100. So he's going to raise your rent $100 and you're going to grumble, but then you're going to pay it because it's still a better economic decision for you to remain in the property for the extra $100 rather than having to move.
Okay. How does that work then? Because historically what we've done with rentals, personal rentals, we've tend to be one of the better deals in the neighborhood.
Right. So
why do we do, like, obviously we know the business. We understand that how this works, but why have we tended to be a little softer on rent prices, and
right.
What's the theory behind that?
Right. So my philosophy is that when we have a tenant renew, I look at what's going on in the neighborhood and we renew to where we are, either that we're somewhere toward the bottom, but we are not the least expensive thing and we're never the most expensive thing. So the reason we do that is because that tenant is a known quantity. So that tenant's been a good tenant, they've been paying rent on time, they've been taking good care of the property, and they're a known quantity. So I would rather keep that tenant. But at the same time, I don't want to not raise the rent, because as rents increase over time, I am going to get to a point where I'm losing money having that tenant in there, and then it's not fair to raise the rent 30% in 1 year for that tenant. That's not something that they can absorb either. Yep. So I try to kind of find that sweet spot between increasing it enough to keep up with inflation and kind of sort of keep up with the neighborhood, but not charge them the top of the neighborhood, which is maybe where I was when they initially rented, because I had the nicest house in the neighborhood. So I do try to find that happy place.
Okay. We had one tenant that was $1,100 a month for many years.
Right. And that was not a tenant that was ours. That was a tenant that belonged to a client.
Okay. It was a client's tenant.
Right. So I would go back to the client every year and I'd say, hey, the lease is coming up for renewal. Can we raise the rent? And the client would say, well, but they're such nice people. It's like, okay, they're such nice people, but can we raise the rent? And they'll say, well, not this year. And this went on, and it went on and on. This literally went on for almost 10 years. Uh-huh. So at the end of the 10 years, the people looked at me and said, well, we're not making any money on the house, so we're going to sell it. So we need to go ahead and ask the tenant to leave. How is that benefiting? I mean, it benefited the tenant for the 10 years, I grant you, that they didn't have rent increases. But asking her to leave at that point, that was harder. Had we had incremental, reasonable rent increases over time, then they probably would not have sold the house. She would have been able to stay, because for her to move, it was really difficult. At the same time, she could not afford a 60% rent increase, okay? Because that's what it would have taken at that point to bring the house to the bottom of the market for that neighborhood. She couldn't afford a 60% increase, partly financial, but partly is just psychological too. I mean, going to somebody and saying, hey, a 60% rent increase, that's not something that most of us can compute.
Right. And the problem is sometimes if they don't understand rents are going to go up, then it's hard to do.
Right.
And it's hard to do when you get way behind because like Wanda said, that you could raise rent 30%.
Right.
But then all of a sudden to them, it's like, oh, why am I being punished?
Right. You know, I had a client and he had a number of rental properties. And something that he said to me was that even in a declining market, even if it meant raising rent $25, he would raise the rent $25, not for the $25, but to train the tenant that there will be a rent increase every year. What that rent increase is depends on the market, but there is a rent increase. And I thought that was a really good strategy to psychologically prepare tenants for that rent increase and not have it be a shock.
Okay. But these were low rent properties too.
Actually, this particular property wasn't. We were talking about what he would do in a declining market.
Oh, we haven't had that yet.
Yeah, so
okay.
He said that even in a declining market, he would raise rents.
What last thing, and then we'll wrap up the video. So we have a shortage of homes in the U.S., 4 million. Mm-hmm. That's the number of homes we would need to build to have more stable rents and real estate values that didn't keep going up every year, right? That were more affordable and stuff. So there's this argument that, the percentage of, they're building 700,000 or 800,000 units, dwelling units, like in apartments that are multifamily. So they're apartments being built. But that really doesn't, so it's not like that takes care of 20% of the shortage, right? Because while you could live in an apartment, it's not really it's not a house. Like we're talking about, you want to live in a house, not in an apartment building that was maybe built. Like, how does that compare?
So, of course, not all apartment buildings are created equal.
Right.
Some are very luxurious and far nicer than lots of homes. But generally speaking, people do want something that they can call their own. People want the opportunity to build equity, to build wealth, and apartments tend to be a stopgap measure and a stepping stone to homeownership.
Yeah, my sort of what I've observed is that people go into an apartment and then they rent a house and then they buy a house. Right. That's sort of been because usually the apartment, and even in big cities, right? Well, in like the Bay Area, what they were doing was 3 or 4 people get together and rent like a 3-bedroom apartment. And they would all take a room because it was super expensive. And then at some point they would move out to the peninsula or East Bay and they would rent a house. Mm-hmm. So they had a house. They weren't crammed in, right? And then at some point someone would split off and go buy a house.
Right.
Right.
So, home ownership is the great American dream. It's, it's something that most of us aspire to. And if you aspire to that, we completely understand and we honor your aspiration. If you're in an apartment, you're not less than. We understand that an apartment, there's a time and a place for that, and that's great too. If you like the video, if it was interesting, if it was entertaining, if it was humorous, please like the video, hit the notification bell, subscribe, share the video, and leave us a comment. Tell us what you think. We appreciate your comments and we like engaging with you. You don't have to agree with us. We appreciate all the comments, and please be nice to one another in the comments. See you on the next video. Bye.
Bye.